and ruthless conspiracy to send to the news, stifle dissent, cover up our mistakes. Cover up our mistakes.
Welcome to the Union of the Unwanted, June 2nd, 2025, back, cast characters. If you want to connect with us, unionoftheunwanted.com. You can find information about the show, about the merch. If you like the show, please rate it. If you think we've done a good job, give us 5 stars. That goes for everybody on the panel. That goes for any of the podcasts that you're really actually into. Make sure to rate them. It seems like a very minor thing, but that's how the algorithm knows to suggest shows like this to normies. We're all going to find it. It's not about us. It's about those people that are sort of on the outside that you want to reach. And so let's play that algorithm game as best as we can. So thanks in advance. Let's talk about UFOs. We brought on a pretty diverse cast here, and I don't say that just because it's Pride Month. I mean that with all seriousness. This is a topic that is filled to the brim with fuckery, and it is extremely difficult to figure out what's real, what's not, what's 90% true and 10% bullshit. And they've used this tactic for a long time to hide a variety of things. But in the UFO community, they have really done a great job of muddying the waters. And so we get to these benchmarks where there's no such thing as any of this, and then, well, maybe there's, then it starts to, well, maybe, these guys had some abductions, and it still gets denied. And then we start to get government officials or quasi-government officials, people connected to it with questionable CIA backgrounds, Jim Semivan, Lou Elizondo, all these guys, to the Stars Academy, all these operations that feel very inauthentic and filled with too many spooks and too much marketing behind it and too much normalization from, I remember when this was all fringe, and the minute you started talking about it, everyone rolled their eyes and wanted to change the subject. But now it's being forced on us by a bunch of people who are known liars, and I'm not buying it. I might buy that there's something out there, but it's being delivered to me by the least authentic people around. And so, this is something that I observe kind of casually, but I don't do a lot of work on it. I've always been fascinated by it, but it's sort of in the wheelhouse of some of you guys. I wanted to start with, we've got Bruce Fenton here, and it's past his bedtime, but we kept him up anyway. So Bruce, good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm pretty well, yeah. Thanks for inviting me in. It's good topic. Your UFOs, very much a hall of mirrors. So looking forward to seeing what everyone's perspective is.
What do you make of this? I mean, you've been all over this topic for a while. You want to. There's like a push for normalization, a push for the mainstream. You want people to understand that there's something out there going on. But then when it happens, I throw my hands up and go, I don't want it this way. I want people finally talking about it. But when Tucker Carlson's talking about it and all these guys, I just, it doesn't feel like, I want disclosure a different way. Am I being too arrogant? Am I being too demanding, Bruce?
No, I don't think so. But at the same time, I don't think it's a bad thing that the media and the public are discussing the topic, even though I know that what's being done is not authentic. But the only reason I say that is I think that at some point it will take other people to come in and basically co-opt the co-opted narrative on this. Otherwise, it will continue down a path towards, like being just a bizarre hall of mirrors psyop full of nonsense. But at the same time, I think you do need some kind of coverage, and the only way that's going to happen without little green men comments and silly music is if some of these CIA guys and billionaires and stuff are kind of pumping the topic for their own reasons. But the tricky bit is going to be like grabbing the microphone away from them You know what I mean? That's going to be the real crux of this issue. Um, that's what I think we have to do. You know, we have to sort of grab it back now that they've brought attention to it, because obviously what's being sold to the public is mostly some kind of mix of personal weird beliefs by some of these guys, but also psychological operations. I think, you know, certainly there's a lot to do with the drone war in this as well. And keep in mind that we have entered a new reality in terms of military conflicts, right? I mean, we are in the drone war era. So you think about it, when they start to normalize this topic and the UAP, and you know, it's time to take it seriously. But what was happening was that around the world, particularly in Russia, China, people are viewed as US enemies, or at least, you know, potential enemies. They don't really have a stigma around the UFO topic. So if somebody sees something, they say something, that kind of thing. Whereas in the US, they deliberately created stigma in the past when it made sense to shut this down, because like Air Force people were getting, you know, inundated with what's UFOs. It was kind of a waste of time. It wasn't really helping the military. It was a waste of their time, so they viewed it. But the thing is, now drones can take pretty much any form. So if you think about it, like an airbase is getting buzzed by novel drones that look like, you know, glowing orbs or flying saucers. In the past, that was ruined someone's career, so nobody will report it. But now those could be novel drones. So suddenly they need to see something, say something. The only way to do that was to normalize the topic and say, yeah, there's really weird stuff out there. You've got to report it. Pilots are seeing it. So if you think about it, there's a few different streams are meeting here, you know, but you shouldn't sleep on the element of this, which is the drone part. If you look at some of the prominent people like Chris Mellon, he's repeatedly talked about the drone threat aspect of this and talked about China's potential. I think that gets kind of missed out of the conversation, is that, you know, that it's part of the era we're in. You
know? Jason Bermas, are you feeling like I'm feeling when you start to get this overlap between the tech bros and making drones, Lucky Palmer, Andrel, you know, the blending of these tech companies with the military industrial complex making drones, and blurring this line between what you see in the skies. I mean, now it used to be, well, I see a shooting star, and it's like, well, maybe I see Starlink actually going by, or you know, or I see a UFO. Well, maybe you see one of these crazy war drones that these guys are testing out. I mean, what's your feeling on the role of the Silicon Valley in the UFO topic?
Well, just because you mentioned Lucky Palmer, and I think that that's kind of important for those that don't know Lucky. Like you said, Andrel is this new kind of hip AI weapon system, and he's advocating for the United States to be the world's gun store with these AI weapons, land, air, sea, you name it. You know, I've looked at this topic since I was a kid, right? I mean, well before I looked at 9/11 or anything geopolitical. Really, my jumping off point was the UFO issue. Some of the first things I did when the internet came in the late 90s was, for instance, get myself copies of the Majestic 12 documents. You know, I got the MK Ultra ones that you could read at the time because no one had really transcribed them and they were really tough to read. But the Majestic 12 ones were kind of, you know, you could read through them. I've seen so much smoke and mirrors through this whole thing. I'm one to say that I think that the vast majority, 99+% of what's out there is total Johnny nonsense. I am not convinced that quote unquote aliens exist. I'm not convinced that interdimensional demons exist or beings, etc., controlling these things. I'm not convinced that they come from here. I say that all of those are a possibility, as well as the possibility of our own military industrial complex tapping into technologies, not only post World War II, but probably post World War I into World War II in secret, and kind of shepherding the narrative and the agenda. Because the agenda for consolidation of power, authoritarianism, and now transhumanism have been on the table for a really long time. So when I look at this topic, I ask myself, what have I seen? Because up until now, yes, we had some CGI. Now we're getting into deepfake territory and AI, and it's only going to get wilder. Holograms have existed for a long time. I question how much of this has been miniaturized drone technology that has some kind of light projection. I say that because, you know, you have all these stories back in the 80s and 90s, especially, of these football size UFOs that were moving very, very slowly, but not making a sound, right? And you kind of have to take a step back and look at what we really know. We know eyewitness accounts, we know video, we know the documentation chain that we're allowed to see, and we know, quote unquote, unsolicited whistleblowers. And that's about it. You know, we got to have discernment from there. So I'm really happy that we're going to be taking on this topic. You know, I've been throughout a lot of these whistleblowers, and one of the things that I really encourage people to watch to kind of understand the lengths the government will go for a PSYOP is Mirage Men and the story of Richard Doty. So I think that's a great jumping off point if anybody wants to take it from there.
Go, Brando. You know you want to talk.
Dude, it's so brilliant. Absolutely. Great topic. Good to see everybody. It is, guys. And at the core, I mean, we must not ever forget what government means, right? The root of the Latin word government, governmente, mind, control. This whole thing is perception managed top down. It's either existence from infinitum or at least the way it's managed now. And exactly what you said, Charlie, when we opened up here, when they're parading 4-star generals in front of you and then saying that what they're really going to talk about is behind a closed door, they're giving you bullshit. And this is always very important to remember, that it's all about controlling your mind.
Well, they have a lot of practice doing that, and I don't know why the UFO conversation wouldn't be any different than any other aspect of society in which they're trying to control our perception, and limiting what we believe and what we're allowed to talk about. But it seems that we're now allowed to talk about this. And that makes me nervous because
Isn't
we
it
weren't
good?
for a long, long time. And so I go, well, if you want me to talk about it, why? Why do you want me to? Is there something? Is there some plan? Is there something going on? Is there something that you need to normalize? Is that, you know, because you push and push and push and no, they won't give you an inch. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, come on in. And you're like, whoa, wait a second. All right, hang on a second. Now I'm suspicious of why you're even allowing this conversation to go on. So, what have you
Now it's
guys?
useful for you to talk about it, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I would argue this. We've been conditioned to talk about it for well over 100 years. You know, that's the thing. If you go back to the science fiction literature, if you go back to the popular culture that was on radio, if you go back even pre-Star Wars, which is a huge leap, forget about the ETs and the Close Encounters, where they kind of normalize it in a real world sense, right? That's where it starts getting into your neighborhood and your community and kind of interpolating with the sightings and the different kind of cultures that had popped up. Because it wasn't just the Greys at first. There were the Palladians, the tall whites, etc., those type of tales. But really, when you got into the late 80s, early 90s, especially with the Lazar story, by the way, and I'm not dismissing him or him working there, but right in that time period, you know, the X-Files came into play as well. And they very much told that lore, although they skewed away from it a little bit, of the gray aliens. But what did you get? You got a subsidiary of that. And really space travel in general. You can go back to, you know, 50s TV shows. They were just ripe with it. One of the things that I do when I go thrift storing is I get like old 50s and 60s kind of space memorabilia. Disney, you know, always had Mickey Mouse and Pluto on the moon. Disney, huge proponent of our perception of space with NASA in conjunction with Werner Herzog. I mean, you go back to the things that you watched as a kid or your parents watched as a kid, The Wonderful World of Disney had a whole lot of Nazis in the beginning. So, again, I think that the idea that, now is the moment where we're talking about it in reality. Now is the moment where they're rolling out a lot of this technology they've been working on in secret for 70 or 80 years. And it'd be great to have an otherworldly explanation for that. But again, don't want to hog the space. Love to throw it to somebody else.
I think the technology being ahead of its time is a really important point. And what Charlie mentioned, the Overton window of allowable opinion, it kind of brings me back to what's the third rail with all the disclosure with UFOs, because everything seems to be smoke and mirrors and testimonials. It's the Antarctic Treaty. And I think that there's a lot more to be said for what's inside the Earth, possibly. What's below our oceans. We haven't discovered more than 60% of our oceans, I think, is the number that they always say. And I think there's more to be said about that, and that being, the barrier for all the first world nations across the world. We can fight about everything else, but everybody drops in lockstep with the Antarctic Treaty. So who knows what's buried in there below the 2 miles of ice. I think that there's probably UFO technology that precedes us, quantum leaps 60, 70, 80 years in advance of us. So I think there's a lot to be said for that too.
Yeah, when you get all of the governments of the world to agree on one thing, that makes me very nervous about what it is. And I'd like to say, oh, it's just a big frozen piece of ice out there, but and maybe it is, but their behavior is what's making me want to know more about what they're doing there. And plus, when you ran those, when they pulled those Fitbit tracking map, and they showed all those people working in Antarctica with Fitbits on and things like that. What the fuck are you guys doing down there?
Charlie, just jump in on that. This whole idea that there was a Chinese spy balloon over the United States was some of the most asinine jackassery I've ever heard of in my life. Like, that's not real. If you were paying attention, Hirsch actually told everybody the truth. First of all, we have satellite systems that are not in low Earth orbit and are, in fact, on helium. Okay. They're in the balloons. And that is exactly what that was. And what that was a satellite system for GPS and communications around the Arctic Circle that is used globally for those that have kind of signed this treaty and navigate that area. Full stop. That was it. And I think, because we saw multiple issues of that, we're human beings. We make mistakes, right? Obviously, there was probably more deployment of that technology recently, just like there's been more deployment of Starlink recently. And that's another big thing that I think now is the time they're trying to build a new smoke and mirrors around this topic, is the new weaponization of space. I don't think that Star Wars failed, the SDI initiative, Strategic Defense Initiative of the 80s. And I also don't think that it's a coincidence that Trump is now talking about the quote unquote Golden Dome. I think that's the update, everybody. So, now we have new materials. We're able to put lighter things in space. One of the things I did recently on my program is I pulled up Edward Teller. Anybody can do it, from C-SPAN. I believe in 1988 or 89, about 5 to 6 years after the initiative had launched. And he's kind of describing, at least what he can in the public arena, of how far it has gone from just of the thought process to the realization process. And basically at that point, he says, look, do we have a perfect system? The perfect system doesn't exist. But on small scale nuclear attacks, we're probably winning 100% of the time. And he said, even on large scale ones, there will be salvageable cities. This is 1989. Okay. The quantum leap in the type of technologies that have been put into space. I mean, not just Starlink, but DARPA's own Blackjack system launched with Starlink over the past decade plus. So again, I think that also plays into it. I think there's a lot. I mean, when you talk about the type of technology that's rolling out, we are now in the post-truth era, the quote-unquote bio-nano era. And if you believe NASA's own white papers, you guys mentioned what they do in the ocean. It's where a lot of these guys train. Deep down in the ocean via NASA. If you don't know about it, even on the Rogan podcast, one of the astronauts discussed, having to go to the bathroom in these areas and how difficult it was and how he was almost swallowed by a large fish. Good times. I think that that's it too. You know that the people in charge want to make us think that there is limited resources and not an abundance. Yet, even with the AI that they're talking about rolling up, they're like, you know what? We're just going to have mini nuclear centers everywhere for these things in these giant areas that is going to produce more energy than ever. But it's not for human beings, it's for the machines. You know, they don't have to make sense. They just have to get people to parrot things and believe things. So if you believe in some fantastical wonder world of benevolent aliens, or on the flip side, that they're not great aliens, great. As long as the enemies aren't the ones that are truly wielding that technology, Eisenhower military industrial complex style, scientific elite style, behind the scenes.
Is there not an argument to keep up with China, though? I mean, I guess it depends on if you believe this battle over global, supremacy is real or not. But I mean, Palmer Lucky's, Anduril, I don't know if you guys know the esoteric symbolism behind that, but it's named after the blade in the Lord of the Rings that was reforged for Aragorn, the Flame of the West, which is described as a glowing with a fiery light symbolizing hope, renewal, and Aragorn's rightful claim to the throne of Gondor. So basically, it's like transitioning a ranger to a king. And I mean, there's some pretty interesting arguments that we do have to keep up with China and Russia and whoever else is making these drones and AI. I mean, there is an AI race now. We can't just not participate in it as the West, right? Or as USA and hopefully Canada to your north. I mean, I'm sure we're going to be part of the Golden Dome. We have to be, right? Maybe that's how we can become the 51st state finally, is under the dome. But I mean, I think disclosure's already happened. I'm super positive about it because, Hal Pitoff's been on Joe Rogan. I mean, if you would have told me 10 or 15 years ago how many people talk about UFOs on X and how many researchers there are and how many people are talking about crashes openly. I mean, this is like a sea change from when I was interested in it in the 90s and the 2000s. So I think disclosure is here. I think this is going to be the year of more revelations. There's been, Trump and some of his science advisors already been talking about the technology they have. Like, I think it's positive.
Well, let me answer that for a second, because there's a couple things you said there. Let me start with Hal Puthoff. Okay. Hal, I watched that entire,
Yeah.
Show of hands, how many people watched the whole Hal Puthoff Rogan thing? Anybody else? So a couple people.
Yep.
I was highly skeptical of everything the guy said.
Of course.
But even what he put out there was nothing new. There was nothing that made me think, oh, this guy's a credible guy. There was even when he talked about the think tank that he was in, there was nothing there that said that couldn't been a high level psyop for guys like him to go out, whether they knew things or not, right? I also think that you're right. You just talked about Palmer Luckey. Obviously, we've got to have weapon systems. I am not Mr. Peacenik, Mr. Anarchist, non-aggression principle. I live in the real world. But I look at the weapon systems that are being utilized via AI, not just like in the future, what they've already done. No bueno, my friend. You don't pick 30,000+ people by some mystery criteria on who's a terrorist and then use some wayward technology to blow them up in public via pagers, right? That's dangerous. We've already had drone technology that targets, quote unquote, terrorists autonomously out there. That's the big thing. These small, quick death drones that work totally autonomously. And basically you have, quote unquote, swarms of them under one person's direction. But if they're programmed there, they're killing their target without a human being or not. What if that comes to the United States? I don't think it's an if, but when. I think that we should be worried about Palantir and other dudes, even if they're in cool Hawaiian shirts and flip-flops, naming like death machines after Lord of the Rings, man. So my issue is, what have they done with the technology already? In large part, when we're talking about humanity, they've taken their fist, they've dipped it in glue and then glass, and they've not so slowly jammed it up our ass. So color me skeptical on all of it. And we're already seeing the early AI models they're having us play with that are super deceptive and super on the quote unquote mainstream agenda. So if we continue to go in this arc, I don't see how it ends up being positive overall for you, me, and the rest of humanity. That's kind of my thought on that. But we do need a military, and obviously we do need, like when Trump says we have weapons that nobody else knows about, good, but can we maybe kind of find a way to utilize that same technology for lower energy, or a way to empower humanity, or a way to grow better food, or a way to cut prices somehow? I'm sure there's a way.
It sounds like you're not trusting the plan to me, Jason.
Also, the whole thing about the Palantir, is an interesting side note, because I mean, at the end of the day, the Palantir is the technology that Saruman the White used to see all things and to know all things, that connected him with Sauron, the Dark Lord, and corrupted him and turned him completely evil. And so it's a funny thing to name your surveillance technology after something that they know became the source of tapping into immense darkness. You know what I mean? So you got to think about that. Why would you sit down and do that?
This is
These
the thing.
people
It's
that
all around us,
crowdsource
right? It's all around us. You beautiful nerds find this shit, and it's awesome. We have a whole series on the Patreon that's totally free. You guys check it out, called The Cinematic Alchemist. And our friend Louis Snooks picks out movies like this. He's gone through we're working on 5th part of Dark City, and he breaks down the esoteric meanings in movies, and it's all around, guys. And so again, if you find this and you pick it out, I look at this place now as a huge escape room. And I don't think that we're given pictures, we're given puzzles. And that's the whole point, right? The place would be boring as shit if you were just giving answers all the time. And we're figuring that out. And it's getting more interesting because more of us are stepping up and figuring this out and talking about this stuff. Especially, I just want to point him out here, Logan from Luminary Lighthouse. He's got an incredibly cool YouTube channel. You guys check him out. He does, there's a lot about our history that we're basing a lot of these conversations on that is probably not true at all. And there is a lot to do with Antarctica. So I'm grateful that it got brought up. And this place ends up feeling, Alex has got the M. Night Shyamalan feature on his camera over there with these directing shots zooming in and out everywhere.
I can't
That's
turn
what
it off.
I know, it's great. Look at that. I love it. Dramatic. God. But that's what it feels like. Is that movie, The Village by M. Night Shyamalan, where basically there was this area that didn't know that it was way more in an area that's way more advanced all the way around it. And they were kept in sort of this darkness about it. But as they started to figure it out, they woke up. And maybe this is the whole point of all of this, guys. It's an escape room. We're all given pieces to this thing, and we're putting the shit out of this puzzle together. And you guys are crushing it.
Another thing with PFP, did you guys see the Graham Hancock extended news article the other day? But anyway, in there, they talk about a meeting with Peter Field that Graham Hancock had. And Field was talking about funding him, right, to go out and do all this investigation into ancient mysteries and stuff. But he realized that actually Pierre Field's interest was more in looking for evidence of ancient alien stuff. That he was more in there on Banneker mindset. And if you look at some of his interviews lately, he's talked about aliens are going to be angels and demons, as they have to be because of the technology they have. They're either going to be angels or they're going to be demons. And he's been saying that this weird kind of Christian revival in Silicon Valley. And it's like, what kind of Christianity fits with Palantir and looking for ancient aliens and UFOs? So there's definitely some weird stuff happening with Field and what's in his head about all this stuff. Do you know what I mean? So obviously the UFO aliens thing is in there. If he's talking about funding people to look for ancient aliens evidence and stuff, I mean, obviously they have some reason to be thinking that.
In the book Exo Vaticana, same type deal. They're more of a religious outlook on it, but it feels like it's a big deception. It's a distraction coming from the sky. And if you look at the two things Elon Musk's invested in, if you want to bring him into the conversation, all the look up in the stars thing is a fraction of what he's actually gotten the funding for. The Boring Company has the highest, I think, isn't that the highest government contract ever paid out? So that's what the most money's going to, is what's under your feet. And again, this place is a look over here, not over here. So it's telling you, oh, look in the sky, guys. We've got all these UFOs coming. You could tie Sergey Manasseh and the Project Bluebeam into this, but I don't think it's that. It doesn't need to go that far. They're already doing it. They don't need to roll out the huge holograms and shit. It's under your feet. And this is the other fascinating thing, is why. So if we're all looking at the sky, what's going on under your feet?
I'm glad we have Matt Ehret here. Matt's fourth episode of his really brilliant expose of the history of UFO culture is now out. I had a chance to see it. Matt, what do you make of this? Like we were talking about how it feels very unusual that the government, wants everybody, it wants to kind of mainstream this topic, and there's a lot of controllers around it, a lot of suspicious dudes. But I suppose that's really always how it's been, right? I mean, given you're watching your series, you see, shit, this has been going on a very long time with some extremely dangerous people involved, and it all feels very manipulative. What's your take on this all?
Oh yeah, and I do apologize for coming in late. Traffic was a bitch up here. But yeah, no, I on that note, yeah, I just as Charlie mentioned, I my wife and I have been doing a series of films called The Hidden Hand Behind UFOs, and we just released episode 4. And yeah, the approach we're taking is that this is basically a Rosicrucian magic trick. That there has been a long-standing idea or motive to create a new type of humankind, which involves essentially the revival of all of the core trappings and psychological, spiritual, and physical controls of the ancient mystery cults that had enjoyed a top-down dominance over the mythologies, the governing myths, the idea of human identities that would be moderated by the type of cultural world and geopolitical world that these mystery cults of Persia, Babylon, Rome enjoyed, and which they've been working subversively to get back. And sure enough, like when you look at a lot of the you start scratching behind the surface of a lot of the big narratives about UFOs being sort of the creators of mankind. What and you start looking at a lot of the agencies that were promoting this going back to the 1950s with people like George Adamski, George Hunt Williamson, the Edgar Casey cult, which soon, by the 70s merged into the Project Stargate, and also has a UFO twist to it as well. But a lot of these things have theosophical origins. They're Rosicrucian, Hermetic, theosophical spin-off groups from the 20s, the 30s, which then drove the creation of a new type of cultural temperament, which involved certain, tricks that would be ingrained into our mass psyche. And so we tackled things like the Roswell incident as one example, but there's many that then fed back into creating sort of what I think has always been the idea, is to redefine, reframe the narratives of what is Christianity, what are the core religions and fundamental value systems, and revamp them all around some form of idea that these transcendental, entities, sometimes demons, aliens, fused into one thing, have been there the whole time, interfacing with the elites, sometimes through the help of psychedelics, and thus we're now being sort of accelerated into something that Lawrence Rockefeller has been behind in a big way since his funding of the War of the Worlds broadcast in 1938, and all the way through the transformation of the USA into a full-blown empire. And Lawrence Rockefeller's machinery has been behind that, the financing of the MK Ultra psilocybin operation as well, to create altered states that then fused right into the Scientology takeover of the U.S. military under Project Stargate, which then drove the revolution in military affairs. And a lot of those same people who did all of that, Hal Puthoff, who brought in Jacques Vallée, Ingo Swann, a lot of them played a key role and always received funding from Lawrence Rockefeller, Robert Bigelow being another one. And they're still there.
Why did the mainstream and the academia push back and fight this for so long then? I just, you guys all talked about how, we've been talking about this for decades, but really we haven't really been allowed to. I mean, it's been laughed at and poo-pooed for 70 years. So why that? Was that just psychological in nature then?
Yeah, now it's useful. That's the answer, honestly.
Yep.
Well, I would argue again that the reason, the main reason that you're probably seeing it right now is the fact that so much of this technology that they're going to roll out that is going to seem fantastical to the rest of us, they can pin on aliens.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Perfect pitfall.
now is the time where, you know, the vast majority of humanity is not going to have access not only to the artificial intelligence, but the true bio nanotechnology that may be of a healing nature. You know, that's one of my main oppositions to a lot of this transhumanism. And I often warn people, I really truly do believe that there is a certain section of humanity out there that thinks that they can biologically live forever by testing on us and utilizing what they have right now by perfecting us, and then convincing the rest of us, for whatever reason, that we can upload our consciousness into some kind of Candyland metaverse. And along that way, you know, if these entities, whether they exist, don't exist, are created by us in a lab underground through our bio nanotechnology. You know, whether they're the cockatrice eggs, whatever, they will look to interface with that. And I think that's sooner than we think. I think that's within the next 50 to 100 years they would like to launch that operation. I think if they are going to disclose that these entities exist, they're also eventually going to have to roll out something that seems to be biological as well. And that may be the ending point. You know, forget about the hologram stuff and the blue beam stuff. All that's interesting. And I think in a lot of ways, some of that's already played out in the skies. But when they roll out a physical thing that someone can touch and feel and a crowd can be around, a lot of people that talked a lot of smack and said that they were going to resist this stuff are probably also going to fall in line. And, you know, you just mentioned Lawrence Rockefeller. I'd love to get your take on, man, I can't, Greer. You know, Greer's going around. I mean, Greer says some wild things. But Greer recently was trying to associate the JFK assassination with aliens. I've watched his documentaries over and over again. They're extremely unimpressive, everybody. I know that some people say that they're impressed. I don't know what they're watching. Like the one with the supposed little alien skeleton, the biggest takeaway I took from that was that Greer was having an illicit, secretive love affair with his bodyguard that kept ogling him, and they were ogling each other, and he's a closeted homosexual that is clearly compromised. I mean, that's what I got from that film. I mean, and everybody that's looking at me a little funny, go watch it again. I mean,
Jason, the film that Bill Cooper would show people when he was still alive was made by a guy named like Lars Holderson or something, and it had that exact theory in it that aliens caused the driver to kill JFK with some kind of special gun that the CIA made and put some kind of shellfish toxin in the bullet. So yeah, there's some pretty crazy people like Greer who've been around for a while. And funny enough, the guy who Bill Cooper says was the shooter of JFK was named William Greer. So I don't know if there's a connection there, but yeah, all these ufologists are full of shit. If anybody needs one book that sums it up pretty good, Adam Go Rightly put together a book called Saucers, Spooks, and Kooks, which pretty much spells out what Matt said as well, and others have kind of pointed to. I think Chris Knoll is another great source of info on all this. He recently connected the Roswell or Roswell situation to the Rosicrucians. As Matt just pointed out, the Rosicrucians have their fingerprints on all this stuff. So I think it's all meant to entrain people to think that this supernatural stuff is third dimensional. I think
I'm always the one that has to defend Greer a little bit. I mean, in the mid 90s, when I was out there with CSETI looking for UFOs, Greer was friends with the guy that would take us out. And by the way, Bermas, I think you're onto something there. I've heard from another source that you're.
Well, let me say this before you go.
Okay.
I'm going to let you go. Watch those videos again. They've got people out in the desert paying to see the UFOs they're going to see.
I mean, I've done it, man.
I mean,
I haven't paid.
grifter to you, just that alone. I mean, I could name 100 other things, but that's what I mean. They're putting that out there. Like, it's not Prophet Yahweh summoning a UFO crazy style for the local news. It's Greer collecting money from people in the desert to summon these
Who
things.
gives a shit, man? I mean, we did it on our own based on the protocols, and we saw lots of stuff. So, I mean, we had tons of experiences, enough that I was like, okay, like I know there's shit out there now. I can kind of, I started getting like, maybe we shouldn't be making contact with anything out there was sort of where I came to. But anyways, Greer said he was going to put the disclosure thing together in the mid '90s, and he did it in 2001. I mean, he did a lot of work for ufology. I mean, whether people want to debunk that whole thing or not, but that was probably still the biggest thing that was ever put together to bring about disclosure for UFOs.
The biggest thing that can actually give us disclosure from UFOs is letting us in on the technology and its actual origins.
And he's for that, man. That's what his one of his main pillars is. And I'm not totally defending everything for him. I'm just saying that there's some things that he's been talking about the energy aspect for decades now.
But
I didn't
again,
have access to
I
the
came around to that and the interdimensional stuff when guys like me started putting out other types of theories other than this gray alien thing. And I'm not saying that he just pushed the grays, but again, go back to that time period. Whatever was culturally significant, that guy was pushing as the academic. And you ask the question, why now? He seemed to be that chosen academic that got to go around and now he gets to talk about the intel. We talk about controlled opposition and gatekeepers. I would just say again, anybody that is compromised by their personal life is ripe for the picking.
Oh, yeah.
Controlled opposition and gatekeeping. And I'm sorry, working with the Rockefeller family, who, I mean, you talk about the military industrial complex, you talk about military intelligence. I mean, David was ex-naval intelligence before he really became, I would say, the anchor point for Rockefeller globalism. I mean, from Bilderberg to Trilateral to you name it. So color me skeptical on the Rockefeller family as well. But again, I don't want to hog the space. I think we got a lot of great people. I'd love to hear other people right now.
Well, dude, that's the thing too. Is that Graham? Do you think it's possible? And again, this psyop goes way back. I mean, the apocalypse could have been by somebody who wrote the Bible a long time ago, or some sort of time travel, and then just dropped the thing, and then we're creating it, right? And so we don't know how long. Again, history's all fucked. So if we're basing all this on his story, then that's a viewpoint. But really, again, if you think about this, what just came out about Greer, about him being an insider agent about something, right? Israel or something like this.
The Baha'i movement. He was a research director of the Baha'i movement in Israel in 1978-79.
Oh,
Fuck,
that makes
Matt.
sense, 'cause
God,
the
you're a
guy that I
useful
was
fellow.
telling you
This
about
dude
was
is
Baha'i.
awesome.
He was in Baha'i.
Okay, so one could say that you were drug out into the desert to see technology that we're seeing now, but that obviously they would have had well into the 90s and been able to use. Greer then just simply gives them drops a pin on where you guys are going to be. They fly some shit around. Y'all get convinced about it 20 years something later. We're talking about it, right? And so this is the kind of long game 4D chess psyop that we're talking about. And Matt, you would love Robbie's work, Robbie Graham. He did the silver screen saucers, and he was talking exactly about what you're talking about, this slow drip feed from the 50s to 70s. And really, he has a letter signed by NASA sent to Spielberg not to make Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And so it drips all the way back. They're sort of like, hey, not yet. But then even its correspondence is now brought into evidence as sort of conjecture, right? And so again, all of this is up for grabs here. And Graham, I mean, you got a cool light show, but it may have, we can say, either been some sort of communication they were hip to, or a technology rollout that obviously would not have been around at the time.
Yeah, but I'm not talking with Greer. I'm talking about like groups all over
Greer's
the world.
group, right?
Let's talk art, like CSETI groups all over the world having their own like legit experiences.
Yeah, they're going to be out here this night at 7:00. Roll them out at about 8:30. That should be hyped.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm open to that. I've said I don't know what they are that we see. They could
Predictive
be
programming,
Black Ops stuff. Who knows?
Yeah. It's just all perception management.
I would just say one quick thing. I did a lot of work on Houdini. Have you guys looked into Harry Houdini and his fight with the spiritualist movement?
No.
It's a fascinating deep dive.
I read some of your articles.
I do.
Okay.
You know, he was a big debunker, right? He really hated them because he got duped into thinking that he had been in a seance with a loved one at a younger age, and he would make it a point to go out and debunk a lot of these spiritual people.
Well, he was actually working with members of parliament and Congress to shed light on the missing children that were being abducted, were being taken in from London orphanages into New York. People in New York were tied to the Crandons. Marjorie Crandon and her husband were major controllers of the Eastern establishment, the Snell family, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies. They were all doing seances together, and it was really taking over. And there was this massive child abduction ring that one of the children was actually found, his dead body, I think a 12-year-old kid, on the property of Marjorie Crandon's estate. That was part of their elite seances. Harry Houdini and Harry Day, who was a member of parliament for the Labour Party in the 1920s, were working together to expose that. None other than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was actually Houdini's major nemesis in this whole thing, who was protecting the Crandons and overseeing a lot of these child trafficking rings tied to orphanages. But what I think Houdini was doing, and it's really fascinating to look at some of the books that he writes, like A Magician Among Spirits was one of the books that he wrote in 22, right before he got murdered. And he was murdered. Was that he's exposing the different techniques that this very integrated network of spiritualists, of which there was something like 3 million in America alone in the 20s. It's a huge number. How they had not just what's called the Blue Book, this index of all of the profiles of every possible target. So they would share it, and there would be like a distribution system in place to share amongst everybody who would pay a certain fee to access the information of different targets. And you get obscure data and information, like the fact that this person's mom had an abortion, whatever, and when they were like 2 years old, and so they would accumulate this obscure data that would help really push people over the edge into belief. The other thing is that they would organize radios too. So they had special radios that they would make sure that would be standardized and used by all participants all across the United States, that would then give people who would be paying into seances evidence that ghosts were being channeled through these radio devices. And I know that in the Greer case, I've spoken to several people who have paid money to go into the forests, these different areas within various forests around North America that Greer manages, that always have a radio that's tuned to a certain frequency that will then at a certain point pick up messages from the aliens after they put out their love vibes to attract the aliens from beyond. Very similar techniques as what was being done by the spiritualists in the 1860s, 1870s, all the way until they were being undone by Harry Houdini, who again did get murdered by this grouping. And they had to kind of, I think, regroup and rebrand their approach, but with a lot of the same techniques that you could see was being used back then: ghost wrappings, table levitations, things like that, that were driving people nuts. That was part of the whole thing that was taking over the U.S. psyche in the 19th century. So, and a lot of it, that's what people like Madame Blavatsky comes out of, right? Like Blavatsky was part of the spiritualists.
Well, she was
with
fighting
all.
She was fighting against it. I mean, she was.
No, she came out of it, and then she
enemies.
ended up creating and then she started criticizing it because they were too sloppy, because they wanted to create a more rigorous, organized cosmology that would be a little bit more, again, systemic.
Not based on deceased loved ones. I mean, I think she just disagreed with the whole evidence of the phenomena of what it actually was too.
But she used the same techniques too, like the evaporation or the appearance of letters from the ascended masters that she channeled that would give her like little teacups. They can go to like Adyar at the Adyar Museum. They still have all of the teacups and letters that were proven to be forgeries. That she would appear. So she was using a lot of the same spiritualist techniques and trickery that she could have justified to herself, saying people needed these little lies to be brought into a belief system that was ultimately going to help them. Maybe, I don't know, but she was definitely tied to the Memphis Mizraim Lodge too. She was an initiate, and she was part of the like she created this Black Magicians esoteric section of the Theosophists alongside the founders of the Golden Dawn in 1888. The same guys that were creating the Isis Urania Lodge in 87 in London. All of the same high initiates, McGregor Mathers, who's tutoring Aleister Crowley, they're all part of the Theosophical esoteric section that's doing all of this crazy murder. Like the Jack the Ripper murders is overseen by these creatures. That itself is tied to what, Charles Warren is also setting up in the Holy Land, so-called, for the creation of a new kind of ideology of Zionism and the recreation of Solomon's Temple. That's partially why Charles Warren is also employed to be an overseer of the ritual murders of the prostitutes in a certain way. Tied to the ISIS Uranium Lodge, all the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn people are a part of it, with Blavatsky and Olcott. So yeah, it's like pretty tight, and she's still using the same tricks.
And Matt, real quick, because I'm learning a lot here. How many of these murders were occurred over ley lines too?
I'm not sure, but they did. The murders were positioned according to the Vesica Pisces, so the positions of the dead bodies. So, and that is an important it's basically a geometry where you just have two circles overlapping that usually share a common radius. And so that has certain occult ritual significance to it, pertaining to the basically sex magic. The idea that the Vesica is the symbol for the female vagina. It's usually tied to some form of a lingam, an obelisk, sort of for the male sexual energy. So you got these things with the Washington Monument. You got it with the Vatican and St. Peter's Square. The conjunction of the obelisk and the Vesica. So they did that there, and it's part of what a lot of these Kabbalists believe was the architecture of Solomon's Temple. So they're kind of using that as the baseline for when they want to rebuild Solomon's Temple, which they believe is a mass human sacrifice domain of ancient, of ancient times, where the Dome of the Rock that still exists today, they believe, according to Charles Warren's writings, was the place where the high priesthood would oversee mass, kind of like Aztecian kind of like mass sacrifice to the gods. So yeah, that's a thing. That's yeah.
I'm just thinking of energy, manipulation and radio frequencies and stuff, and going back to
Alex, Walter Bosley actually wrote a book all about exactly what you just asked, and it's funny because it fits right into the time period Matt is describing, the Empire of the Wheel, which describes a cult of people in California in the early 19th or early 20th century, 1910s, around there. And Aleister Crowley just so happens to be floating through the area as well. And I'm surprised Matt hasn't brought this up yet, but we all know the lamb drawing, which Crowley professed to have made some sort of contact with. Who knows if it was when he was off, buggering his friend in the desert, or in the pyramid where he was abusing his wife. I don't know, but he communicated with this alien, and Chris Knowles, to bring him back up again, one of the points he was making in a recent podcast I was listening to was that the bodies, the biological entities, they were never really described as living beings that were recovered at Roswell, because they weren't living beings. They were some sort of homunculus, some sort of golem, this occult ritual that underpins, what these beings are. And again, I think, Graham, one of the things that my takeaway is, like, there's a little bit of a disagreement here. I kind of agree with both sides in the sense that there is the supernatural, there is the mysticism, but the forces that be are manipulating, like a middleman, our ability to interact with these forces, and I think trying to mimic them and use that against us. And one of the ways that they might be able to mimic these other entities is by creating a body for these entities to possess, and then mess around in our dimension. It goes back to the whole fallen angels concept, and how all these ancient gods gave man technology, and then lo and behold, 2000 however many years later, we're here birthing the AI alien consciousness with our technology that's wrapping its tentacles around the planet. So I think all of it is ritual and occult, and the more they can sort of throw it in your face in this Discordian way to make you question it and make you say, no, it's too good to be true, the better their plan works. And I think the way they do that, and someone already made this point in this conversation is through fiction and sci-fi. And I think Bermas, you said you collect some memorabilia from the space age because it's just, it's kind of hacky at this point. But, we look at that stuff and we're like, how cheesy. We can't even scratch the surface. The latest Katy Perry and Bezos, that whole space launch, they barely scratched the surface of the thermosphere. And they're talking about, oh, we're going into space. It's all ritualistic. It's all to move human consciousness away from a certain direction that's inevitable because they want to continue to have this control over us. I think it's inevitable that we're going to be free from that, and that's why they want to entrain us now to be conditioned to think anything otherworldly poses a threat. And I'm not saying that, oh, well, the space brothers are going to rescue us from big bad Big Brother here on the planet, but I do think that we as human beings have a spiritual capacity that goes beyond just our own consciousness. And if we can get in touch with that other world, we can use those forces to make a positive change in our reality, which is what the forces that be never want, right? They never want us to excel towards a egalitarian or altruistic end. So that's kind of my stance on aliens. I think we all kind of agree in a way, like Sam likes to say, we're sort of screaming in agreement in some ways.
Matt, what can I read about the theosophy and those lodges and the murders? Because it's the exact opposite of what I read in their materials. It's pretty much.
I just wrote a book, volume 3 of my Revenge of the Mystery Cults on Edgar Poe's Final Mystery and Other Tales of Ratiocination. Yeah. So I've got the last 7 chapters in there are on Jack the Ripper murders and the esoteric section of the Theosophists, and also Blavatsky's relationship with Mazzini and Garibaldi, who is Mazzini's agent running these sort of proto-global color revolutions, and who unified the Memphis and Misraim lodges in 1880. That Blavatsky became, and she talks about it, an initiate into the Memphis Misraim. This is a useful connection. Based on what my family thinks I'm crazy was saying, yeah, I mean, one thing that caught my eye, and this came up a little bit before, I think Jason mentioned it too, was the question of the big reveal of new technologies that are going to be increasingly like spun out. And you could see the narrative already like setting the stage for that, where they're already putting out in congressional inquiries and an open dialogue, right? That's being very highly amplified into the mainstream, that we can expect the new tech the tech that we discovered from UFO reverse engineered spacecraft from Roswell and all of the other places that spacecraft supposedly crashed, because these aliens can like transcend the speed of light and jump from one dimension into another with such advanced technology, but they can't fly, so they just crash into rocks all the time. So we've been reverse engineering all of this stuff, that they're sort of saying we can now expect new tech to be brought into the public light. One thing I have noticed is that Lawrence Rockefeller was the founder of the first tech venture capital firm in 1946 with the whole Rockefeller Brothers Fund. And not just him, but Puthoff as well has made a fortune off of this sort of thing, as has Jacques Vallée. One thing that I've sort of been picking up on is that there's been an approach where the oligarchy, they like stasis and they like control, right? I think we all agree the oligarchy loves control. They like predictability in their victims. They don't like people getting too unwieldy with new discoveries. So they like monopolizing the discoveries and resources that are currently in play at any given moment. They would prefer not to have too much unknowns into the formula. So new creative discoveries about like the laws of the universe are pretty disruptive and not pleasant for oligarchs that are obsessed with stasis and control. There's a lot of frontier science and great research that has been done over the last 80 years on different approaches to the quantum, to atomic physics, to plasma tech, all sorts of incredible things. And there's some serious case studies where scientists like James Bussard, the father of nuclear rocket science of the 60s, James Bussard was developing all of these incredible designs based on his studies of Plato's Timaeus. And he was basically building what are known as polywell devices in the 80s and the 90s that would create resonance frequencies in such that plasmas could be organized that would then generate fusion processes at very low temperatures within the certain geometries that he would build up that would be tied to things like the truncated dodecahedron as one, but there's several chambers like that. Costs money though, so he got money at a certain point from Lockheed Martin, the U.S. Navy, and he thought he was in a great spot, and at a certain point, he's making prototype after prototype. They're getting better and better, and by 2007, you can go on Wikipedia and they describe this. He starts breaking the laws of known physics, and at that point, he's iced out of his thing. He's like 89 years old. He ends up dying the next year, broken. He's not allowed to participate, and his discovery just disappears. So it's gone. It's absorbed into the shadow thing, right? There's a friend of mine who's actually been doing some amazing work on another approach to Christian Birkeland's approach to plasma physics too, and the electric universe stuff. Now he was making some incredible breakthroughs with a team in Canada, and they started getting money from a grouping that was affiliated with Harold Puthoff. That Hal Puthoff, right? High level 7th degree OTO Scientology, or operating thetan. Did I say OTO? Maybe it's the same thing. And so same thing. Now, all of a sudden, his discovery is being stunted, or the work that he's been doing, all of a sudden, they can't talk about it. It's being, they sign certain things that will prevent them from speaking openly about the thing because they got the money. They got the money to build their devices. So all I'm saying, though, is that there has been a technique used under the veil of what appears to be capitalism, but it is not really that, to try to corner new technologies and new innovations, and then only allow spin-offs that would be selected by those oligarchs to then make money on the one hand, but to control those frontier sciences. I'd say one other thing, Harry Houdini made a movie. He made some of the original movies in 1916, 17, 18. Some of them are really friggin' good. And one of them has a scenario. I'm forgetting the name, but it's in my book. It has a scenario of an investigator who discovers that uber rich industrial capitalists on Wall Street are trying to steal patents that or not steal, but purchase patents in order to prevent new technologies from being developed for the civilian sector. What a crazy sci-fi out of the box story that is. He's exposing all this stuff, and he's doing this in battle with Aleister Crowley, who's also doing the exact same thing, making movies for a very different reason in New York at the same time as Houdini. And there's a massive fight over the culture going on. So it's, yeah.
Have you gotten into nukes aren't real yet, Matt?
I'm on the fence. I think they're real.
Okay.
I think it's real.
All right.
Let's make sure we get Weezy in here too, because he's been sitting patiently on the sideline along with Teace and Logan. Let's jump in. What do you think about all this, Weezy? You've been working on this stuff for a while.
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to believe, like the X-Files. And then as soon as the government started talking about disclosure and started getting involved, I think I'm out. Yeah, I'm just a huge skeptic when it comes to these things. I will say a couple of months ago, I saw my first UFO as a non-believer, and it scared the shit out of me. I'm out here in Florida. I was about an hour and a half inland from the beach. 5 a.m. in this new subdivision. I'm the only one out there. Left my phone in the truck, went and take a piss outside, and I just started gazing at the sky. And I had done a moon landing show. I do these moon landing shows once a month on my channel with the Apollo detectives. And I saw a satellite traversing the sky. And I was just tracking it. I'm like, man, those sons of bitches ain't really that high. So I was just pondering, taking a piss, dick in hand and all. And then as I looked ahead of the satellite, as it was going across the sky at a steady little, slow pace, all of a sudden this other motherfucker comes up and starts jumping around the son of a bitch high up in the sky. And I'm like, I couldn't fathom what the fuck I was looking at. I was like, it's not a fucking asteroid. It's not a comet, shooting star, or nothing. It starts going around the satellite thing, and then it started descending super quick. I mean, it started like as a grain of sand, and then it got probably to the size of a quarter of the size of a pea. And it started descending, and it felt, I'm not saying this is what was happening, but it felt like that bitch was coming right towards where I was. So I started like, what the fuck? Do I go into the truck and grab my phone? But the way it was moving so fast, I felt if I would have gone to my truck to grab my phone, by the time I come out, I'm going to miss all this shit. So I just kept looking at it. And then it started descending, like I said, and it felt like about the quarter size of a pea. And then the motherfucker just went whoop, straight the fuck up in 2 seconds or less, disappeared. I'm like, I have no fucking clue what does that. Hops around in the sky, da da da, and then just boom, disappears. It didn't disappear in the sense, just like blink of an eye. I did see it head straight up, and then it just got so high up I couldn't see it anymore. I don't know what the hell that was. Was it alien craft? Possibly. Or is it high-grade military equipment? That's also possible. It was right around the time when people were seeing drones and shit. It kind of coincided. So I don't know. To this day, I don't know. That was a few months back. I'm still up in the air. But like I said, man, when I hear the government talking about it openly and disclosure in this, I don't trust anything those fuckers say. So that kind of affects my judgment.
Good
Maybe
on
I
you,
went off
mate.
the rails just right now.
Good on you, Weezy. Good for you, dude.
Guilty until proven
Well,
innocent.
Charlie,
Teace,
I
what do you
say
think?
as well, Matt, I appreciate your series, which I have watched in hand. I really appreciate your series. I think that's an angle that people look at, is the occult angle. Again, I want to push back on something that a few people have said. I don't think the government is getting you to think about UFOs. There is a faction of intelligence people that have bought themselves from journalists. They have also utilized people like Tom DeLonge with a lot of face, a lot of money. They have a long-standing history of trying to push this forward into the mainstream. Other factions have been resistant and didn't want aliens and UFOs in the mainstream, but they have broken through, and they have managed to do it very cleverly. I mean, there was a lot of influencers and journalists who've admitted they were approached and told that there was information to be given to them. If you look at like Stephen Greenstreet, Brian Bender, some of these guys, they come out and said they realized they were being manipulated to bring out a controlled narrative from this group, right? Schellenberger, he got pushed into it. Weinstein, a lot of these guys were approached. They're admitting it now, right? So there was an organized thing to get these media people out there, influencers, Coulthard, a failed like kind of journalist whose career had gone off the rails. They knew what they were doing, and they've managed to time it at a time when the other factions are open to it because of the drone stuff and other things that are happening. There's no longer the resistance that these people have had for decades to get this out into the mainstream. And it is a lot to do with the Scientology. I mean, look, most of the guys, SRI, Scientologist guys like Matt was talking about, and if you look again, you've got a lot of the guys from the Rosicrucian movements are involved. These people, a lot of them believe that this is an occult topic. They're not just doing that as part of the brainwashing. A lot of them believe this. This is, if you go back to, like, say, the Nine channels, we're getting a kind of a reboot. If you aren't familiar with the Nine channels, you had a collective of billionaires, intelligence people. You had the original brainwashers. They were all involved. You had Gene Roddenberry, the whole Star Trek thing coming out of it, the Nine. But this is rebooting, because if you look now with what's happening with this story through News Nation, that you're getting this whole movement around the psionics and making contact. And they're going off, they're meeting billionaires in these retreats, and they're contacting orbs. But the organization doing that is called the ENEA. The ENEA is the ENEA. That's the Nine. That's the same shit. The same stuff is just recycled. So you've got a whole load of billionaires, journalists, intel people. It's the same thing. A lot of these people are even connected through each other back to the original stuff. So again, this isn't your government officially doing something. There is a faction of people that have been involved in this since day dot. And it does connect in with the psychedelic legalization movement and the billionaires that are in that, because they want you opening your mind to what they think is contact with these intelligences, what they believe are their gods. There's some really weird stuff in it. It's not all about, aliens and spaceships in the sky. Most of this is occult topics. And as long as people get the idea it's all about a spaceship in a hangar, you are target number one for those people, because people are not defending their mind space because they think the UFO topic is one thing and it's something else. I mean, very little of it is even about researching UFOs anymore. It's about stories. It's about insiders. It's about narratives. Can you tell which narrative is true? And which persona is important right now? Very little to do with actually some kind of scientific analysis of anomalies in the atmosphere. That is a tiny fraction of this topic. So I don't think but it's not what most people think it is. Look at the whole thing with the insiders very quickly. I said a few months back, I told people, you're going to have so many of these insiders, you won't know what to do with them. Because we need more insiders. Now we have dozens of them. Has it brought any evidence of anything? No. Instead, anyone who has an intel background, who was a senior military officer, can come out with a story that they have been basing on the same shit from the same people, that they're networking with each other, and they'll come out and say, I saw a spaceship, or I saw this document. And now you've got a flood of these people, and not one of them has evidence of anything. And they are controlling the narrative. It's just a whole collective of interwoven figures built around this old story they've been pushing for decades. That's ufology right now. That's the alien topic right now. It's very little to do with any entities. And even whether you believe in entities or not, it's kind of semi-irrelevant. The first thing people should do is defend their mind space from these narratives, and then look into other stuff separately, because this topic's not really about investigating UFOs anymore.
What muddies the waters, though, is AI, man. AI is getting damn good. And I mean, in the last few weeks, I want to say, I mean, even a few weeks ago, you could look at a video, oh, look at that jacked up hand, look at that messed up animal morph into a different animal. You could still tell. Man, the last few days, I'm blown away with some of the stuff I've been seeing. And it kind of coincides with...
Dead.
Dude,
they're over.
And it's amazing how a lot of this stuff, I mean, the Epstein videos coming out, it coincides with this new AI program coming out. It's made me start to take a second look at shit from 10, 20 years ago, because we know intelligence agencies and the military has had their hands on this stuff way longer than we're allowed to have it, and it's just coming out now. So, man, that muddies everything up.
Yeah, Phoenix Lights, 97, everything now going back, and Bruce, you nailed it with this. The UFO video is dead. You're absolutely right. As if they were maybe ever real to begin with. Who knows how far back this shit goes, guys? You know what I mean? They've got, I know Logan in his work, he found Photoshop going on back in the late 1800s. So they've been doing photo manipulation for a long time.
Talk about that, Logan, while we've got you here.
Well,
Welcome
I was
to the
just
show.
gonna thank you guys, and thank you, Brandon. This is a lot of y'all are why I do this now. So it's really cool to see all y'all on my computer. Really, excuse me. I wanted to remind y'all, which I'm sure y'all have heard, Frederick Engels' quote in 1878. Weapons used have reached such a stage of perfection that further progress which would have any revolutionizing influence is no longer possible. Not only have new weapons been developed, but some of the basic concepts of geography and strategy have been fundamentally altered. Space and weather control have replaced the Suez and Gibraltar as key elements of strategy. That was in 1878. So kind of tells you where we are today if they were saying that back in 1878, right? And with the whole UFO thing, I knew once Action Bronson was watching Ancient Aliens on the whatever that show was called. What was it called, Brandon? Do you remember? The rapper that would watch Ancient Aliens and he would just sit there and smoke,
Yeah.
And I'm like, they had to double up on Ancient Aliens, they the the History Channel wasn't enough. They needed to put this guy in front of it too. And that's when I was like, okay, I mean, I was in the Gaia hole. I was paying that monthly fee on Gaia. I was listening to those stories about, triangle beings and stuff. And now I just kind of can laugh at it. But yeah, thank y'all for letting me be here. Yeah.
Teace, what do you make of this? You do a really good job of reaching normies. UFOs are have always been, UFOs and Bigfoot are things that normies talk about before the deep state or before central banking. They don't even get to that. Your first sort of introduction, maybe it's through stories or maybe it's through movies, are typically, UFOs and everything's fine. And maybe there are space brothers and maybe they're coming to murder us. But how do you deal with this topic when it comes to speaking to normies?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, man, I think of like the trajectory of the story that we're all on is kind of like built like a theme park, and theorists got to see some of the stuff that was going to be coming up later from behind the scenes. And then as it's scrambled together in front of us and we observe those things that we got little kind of predictive programming glimpses of, we're like, oh, that's this or this is that. It's really difficult to get people's mindsets up to the weirdness of reality because it's kind of every science fiction movie crashed together at once. And it's not until you go through the ride that it's even believable. So at a certain point, you can't even warn them. All you can really do is try and create a show good enough to show them something that garners their attention so they don't want to be on that ride anymore. A big part of what we were born into is a subjugating structure that gives us light shows, kind of like smoke and light, bread and circus. Some of the bread is real and circus is all around us. And the more in which we entertain that way of being, the less entertaining it's going to be until at a certain point, it's just kind of just like a cliff into the abyss. And that's what this all builds up to. At a very certain point, it isn't just like the fun dynamics of how they've been psychologically programming us. It's what it all amounts to, and that is the contemporary modality of warfare. They can't get away with things the way that they once were, which is baby boomer generation. They're about to dip off, and so too is their conception of normalcy. What is normalcy that comes post baby boomer predictive programming model, a la the way in which Dune and that sort of thing has given us the Isaac Asimov kind of like Tesla template scripts for? We already know all of this. Everything I just said gave you a vivid kind of flicker in your own mind. That is them chipping you. That has already happened to mankind. So what the fuck does something that isn't built out of their building blocks look like? It actually involves taking a big old step back and returning to basics in life. And what that is understanding that whatever weird smoke and mirror show that they're about to throw at us, and it's going to be a big one, and it's going to be incredible, and it's going to take all of our focus and energy to try and differentiate and delineate and decipher the mess that is coming at humanity, because it's built to be that kind of chaos. That's war. What comes after that? What comes out of that? I look forward to seeing where that conversation goes, people, because it is an occult one, and it is a who knows where it ends one, and it's a merry-go-round that I don't want to be on. But I tell you, if we all take a big old step back together and learn not just what we've heard, but what we actually know, maybe we'll have a chance of putting that jigsaw together, and it'll be on this show. So thank you, everyone, for coming out today and for participating in a wonderful plethora of opinions about a very important conversation that is ongoing. And it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves into the next stretch of things.
You get a Howard Dean, Teace. Gotta love your face, dude. Fuck.
Yeah. It feels, it feels like we're watching a show.
Yeah.
And that can be disempowering too, because you feel like you have no say in it, or you feel like you have no ability to get up and walk out of the theater and watch something else. It's being kind of forced upon us by the worst people around, by the least trustworthy people around. And you talked about Stephen Greer. Yeah, he makes a documentary. Okay, he makes a few of those. Great. What do you think of Stephen Greer? Oh, I don't know. My first question would be, where does he get his money? Oh, it comes from the Rockefeller family. All right, well, that's automatic disqualification in my book. Just automatic. And Hillary Clinton is tied to them as well, too. It's like, oh, maybe this is the good Rockefeller. No, no, they're not. There's no good Rockefellers. He's just the one you don't hear about as much. But he's deeply involved in UFOs and all of that. So it makes me very suspicious when I see the least trustworthy people in the world hovering around this topic, be it Hillary Clinton, Lawrence Rockefeller or whoever. I'm interested, I'm open-minded, I'm skeptical, but it goes back to my preference on the information being delivered to me by, I don't know, not Hillary Clinton and John Podesta, just as a start.
Yeah.
I can't accept that.
Say, Charlie, on the Rockefeller thing, just quickly to interrupt you a little bit. If you know the famous photo of the Rockefeller Ranch, where you've got Greer and Bigelow, but the really interesting character is the last guy to the right. I think it's CW, I can't his second name, but he's the intel guy, and he is the main person orchestrating with Rockefeller's money. This guy was so embedded into the ufology movement at the time that he is the actual architect. He was also in the paranormal conferences. He was everywhere. And he said, "There's an article. It's like, they've got the UFO guy you never heard of, something like that." And this guy he's there smiling in the corner, but everyone else is a little puppet on his string. He's a very interesting character. I'll have to pull out the thing and send it to you.
Is that
CB
CB Scott Jones, or is that somebody else?
Yeah, that's right, CB Scott Jones. And so he's standing on the end there. He was getting the money from Rockefeller to help orchestrate a heck of a lot in the UFO and paranormal communities for the Air Force and for the intelligence. Really crazy stuff. But he's the guy you don't get much about because, of course, he's the one sneakily doing all the actual work for Rockefeller, with the money. So, and with all the other people there, of course, great influencers, some of the top names of their time, all standing there, all getting the money, all being influenced by him. He's crazy. Oh, sorry, I was going to say the other thing about Greer. The only thing I'll give Greer credit for is that he pushed back on Elizondo and all that stuff. Other than that, I wouldn't give him much credit. But I will say at least he did push back on the whole TCSA Elizondo a bit. But then, is that so he can come back now? It seems like he's getting brought back in from the cold, where suddenly through the whole psionics thing, they brought Greer back in. And now it's like they're all somehow okay together. You know what I mean? So that was probably a setup anyway, a sort of a fake opposition who now suddenly they're all unified through the psionics. So
can I ask, if you're Lawrence Rockefeller, you've got all of this money and you're at the end of your life, what does success look like for him? What is a successful campaign? What does all this money and influence buy him at the tail end? If he was investing in this narrative, what's the end goal? Is it to confuse people? Is it to keep people in a certain frame of mind where their thoughts are limited? Like, what's the point of it all?
It's the legacy of the New World Order. And I mean, that's what David writes about in his own book. That I think that quote by David, where he literally says, some people would accuse me and my family of going against the best interests of the United States to build a transnational organization, quote unquote, one world, if you will. If that is the charge, I stand guilty. And, again, he's an intelligence guy, but Nicholas Rockefeller was the guy that the man who did Freedom to Fascism, Aaron Russo, knew, and they became drinking buddies. And it was Nicholas Rockefeller that let him on the secret that the plan was to chip everybody and associate their currency with that chip. And if they ever screwed around, you just turn the chip off. And he laughed about it and haha. And he said, "You really want to do this to people?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm worried about me and my family. I'm really not worried about everybody else." And I remember for a while, people had dismissed that because they couldn't find Nicholas Rockefeller. Props to Aaron Dykes, True Stream Media. I remember when he tracked him down, he's like, Nicholas Rock, and this was after Aaron Russo had died. Nicholas Rockefeller, legit dude. So look, I think there is nepotism. I think there are reasons that you have a Saudi royal family in 2025, a Buckingham Palace in 2025, and that in large part, as far as family dynasties goes, the Rockefellers are the last one. You've got social climbers that are in on it right now, like Peter Thiel, who we mentioned earlier, and the Alex Karp gang, and the Schmitz of the world, and the Sergey Brins. But they're Defense Department approved, baby, and they have been from the get-go. So, when the Rockefellers speak and invest in something, I pay attention.
It could be simple as Loose Harvest too. I'm just thinking about what their end goal is from Charlie's original question. I think that's a big part of the equation as well.
Well, this is a topic that I know we're going to have to cover over and over and over again. I'm glad you guys came out for this one. I want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to let everybody know where they are, what they're working on, because because I could tell just from this talk that there's a lot going on. Matt, you're writing about and about things that Graham is interested in. Oh, where can you find? Where can I find this information? There's a lot of topics that got discussed tonight, and I think it's important for people to take in a wide variety of information and see what fits best with you. And also, there's a whole lot of backstory that we don't. I mean, Matt, you write about this, and your documentary series goes into a backstory of the UFO, of the history of UFOs that I would have never thought went as far back as you took it. So there's always more to learn about this topic, and whether you're taking a piss and seeing a UFO like Weezy did, or you're reading about it and making documentaries. I mean, this is the reason why we do these shows, to get everybody to kind of bring their information to the table, and let's throw it out there and see what we think about it. Let's start with Matt, because I know I want to make sure you get a chance to tell everybody where they can get where they can check out your series. I've watched all 4 episodes of it. It is fantastic. It's from a story standpoint, it's great. If you watched it with the volume off and just looked at the visuals, it would be a 10 just by that. So, Matt, where can people find your documentary series, buy your books, and support your work?
Oh, sweet. Thank you for those super nice words, Charlie.
That's true.
Oh, well, yeah. So they can get the first 3 episodes of the Hidden Hand Behind UFOs are freely available. The episode 4 I put behind a paywall. It's like $5 on my Substack. And well, I guess the easiest way would be to find them on CanadianPatriot.org, or just send me an email and I'll send you links to them, including, well, yeah. So that's Canadian Patriot 1776 at tutanota.com. The books as well, the Hidden Hand Behind, no, sorry, the Revenge of the Mystery Cults. And like you said, this stuff goes kind of dark and it goes far back into the ancient civilization stuff. It goes into Swedenborg, the Rosicrucians, John Dee, the creation of the Mormons as another UFO cult that sort of seeded a lot of the other stuff that Aleister Crowley emulated and was inspired by. So that stuff is, those 3 books that I just put out are available also on my website. Same one that I just mentioned. And yeah, that's a lot right there. Oh, and I would just want to say one thing to Fenton Spectrum. I think the thing before we start like allowing our convictions to take a leap into judging like either one thing or another, like I think taking an assessment of trying to understand as much as is understandable and available to reason about mapping out the terrain of these black magician, occult, Rosicrucian Satanists. Like really, not being unrigorous on this. Like I think we have to be if we don't know why the Scientologists are a direct black magician outgrowth of the OTO of Aleister Crowley's Agape Lodge, which Parsons and Hubbard were doing sex magic and stuff, trying to invoke the Antichrist in the desert. If we don't know and haven't taken the time to fully appreciate how that just got rebranded under the Scientology sort of front, then we didn't go far enough yet. And I think that just doing some of that mapping, that mind work before like circling back to the topic of UFOs, drugs, whatever our opinions are on these topics is important. Just reserve judgment on that, put it aside, review the Satanists as much as you can, then return back to these topics that we might have strong feelings about one way or the other at the moment, So I would just support that little thought that you shared there, Fenton.
And please, Scientology, don't sue us. Thank you.
Oh yeah. I got threatened. Anyway, yeah. Okay, yeah. You got to be careful. Yeah.
They're awful.
No, these guys do not miss a beat.
No.
Yeah, you got to be very careful with the words you use.
They're very litigious. It's a dangerous cult. Bruce Fenton, good to see you again, man. Tell everybody where they can find you, where they can support your outstanding work.
Sure. Yeah, I'll very quickly, so as I say again, I really enjoyed Matt's series. So again, I definitely recommend that to everyone. So Hidden Hand. But yeah, if people want to have a look for me, I'm on Twitter too much, so you can find me on there as current one, Genomics 30, my handle on there. Amazon, couple of books. Probably the most relevant one for this topic, the alien one, is Exogenesis Hybrid Humans. But I've got another one which is on human origins and stuff, which is The Forgotten Exodus. And yeah, I've got a website, Alien Technosignatures, doing a project that basically, look, I claim I'm the only person with any evidence of aliens visiting Earth. Big claim. You can have a look, see what you think. I've got Substack, it's linked on my Twitter, I think, and also I'm trying to think, I've got stuff on YouTube and stuff, but I mean, probably tell people on Twitter if they want links and stuff. Yeah, my last one, very quickly as well, just to is that the inspiration to say, where are all the Scientologists, where are the Radians, where are the Mormons, all these alien groups, if you think about it, they're quite quiet on social media, but they're definitely involved in what's going on right now. So it's quite funny. You think there's thousands of these people that don't seem to be announcing they're there, but they're definitely in play. And they're talking to each other, networking, against you in these topics. So people have to keep that in mind, that there's thousands of people in alien religions who have a very vested interest in what's happening right now. And that they're not announcing they're there. So keep that in mind. Yeah. Cheers. I appreciate this chat. Great connecting with everyone. And yeah.
Thanks for staying up late with us in the UK. Jason Bermas, what are you working on these days? What's cooking?
You can check me out over at X, Rockfin, Rumble, and of course YouTube, where I'm completely demonetized. Just really talking about transhumanism. Did a video on Palantir and AI before it was revealed that they were going to be doing the brand new database on individuals in the United States. I got news for everybody. There are multiple databases on all of you. There's an Apple social credit score. There's a Google social credit score. So if you don't think the government has access to all that stuff, I don't know what you're paying attention to. But all of this stuff is extremely dangerous. And that's why I'm focusing my work on the military industrial complex, the stuff that goes beyond left and right, the weaponization of space, AI, transhumanism, all the fun stuff, Charlie. So please, I'm pretty much at Jason Bermas everywhere. Give me a follow, give me a subscribe. Check out all the documentaries for free that are now all a decade plus, I think almost 15 years old. I mean, 2013 is the last one I put out. Shade the Motion Picture, Invisible Empire, Loose Change, and Fabled Enemies, Charlie.
Well, I don't know what you're so worried about. I was told by the MAGA people that we don't have to worry about Palantir because they're aligned with Donald Trump and he's going to save us. So, I don't know.
We're the nerds on the connection to Palpatine. Come on.
Brando, what do you do? Let's talk to you.
Oh shit.
What are you working on? You've got books.
We do actually, yeah. So the journals are, we do a publishing house called Rediginal Publishing. All words are made up, so I figured I'd give it a go. Rediginal means ridiculously original. And so we do host a journal series that I've created that feature all kinds of cool stuff. Charlie, you got some quotes in that bad boy, I think. And they're very cool. Amazon and Barnes & Noble, just check for the expansion series. We also have a few more from some other folks. We're starting to publish other works, and that we're not ready to speak on yet, but look forward to that. You can find me at Expanding Reality Podcast, all the things. I think that the Patreon is where I'd point you guys. There's a ton of shit over there for free. We host multiple series there that don't go out on the main feed, but they're absolutely free over there. So go check that out. Cinematic Alchemists, Frequency Theorists being another one. This one we get together, we do all kinds of cool stuff. We have episodes like The Moon is Bullshit and Helen Keller is bullshit. So we talk about all kinds of stuff. It is a 2-hour talk about Helen Keller being bullshit. It's great. It's probably most likely a sigh for the socialist movement. It's fascinating. Anyway,
that gets an A+ for the name alone, man.
It's a lot of fun, and we rate them as questions, right? Because Eric von Daniken's thing is a big deal, and I think this is an important part of this too. Is there's a guy on the show, Andrew Benjamin, one time, and he said the answer to life is the mastery of questions. And if we're asking the right questions and make sure that we're also not claiming the fucking moon is real and lizard people are doing this and that, maybe the moon is bullshit and are lizard people doing this and that, maybe, put a question mark on the end of thing, it gives us a lot more opportunity. This is also where I'll just go on my little rant. You guys can find me on all the things.
Well, thanks for coming, and thanks for inviting Logan from Luminary Lighthouse. Logan, where can people find you?
Dude is a badass. Logan, go check out his series on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate this. This is a dream come true.
We're glad to
Luminary
have you.
Lighthouse on YouTube and TikTok. I've been doing a lot of TikTok lately, but it's just basically I read history with some sarcasm and it just works, you know. So it sounds like bullshit immediately.
I love it
So it's
already.
yeah, and I've got a video on YouTube called The Unknown Great Wall of Texas, and it's not Rockwall, Texas, as everybody thinks. It's in Malam County and Burleson County. It's a two newspaper articles I found, and I will be doing a presentation on Brandon's show in a couple weeks. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got going on right now. Thank you again.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. How about you, Alex? Where can people find you? I know you're in Connecticut. I don't mean like hunt you down and find you, but I mean, where can they find your work?
Well, real quick, I just wanted to say, Logan, love your logo too on YouTube. It's really nice.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex Ranniello, AB Ranniello on Instagram. That's pretty much my major hub there. Libertarian Party of Connecticut as well. I'm a base mural artist here in Connecticut in the Enfield area. I wanted to say, if you're in the tri-state area, come say hello. Let's do shrooms. Let's have a nice conversation. But
Okay.
but yeah, looking forward to hopefully seeing Ricky and Mark in August for Sam's next show coming up here. That'll be a lot of fun. We had a great time last year. So, and the other thing I wanted to say to anybody else, because we didn't have time to get to it, was I took up Charlie on his challenge to listen to Unchained Earth's conversation with Ether. I thought that would have been a great appendage to this episode, but that'll be a conversation for another day. But anybody who's interested, definitely go check it out. It's well worth the time commitment.
Yeah, that was weird. And that goes back to Brandon's point about what that guy said about asking the right questions. I think the people that are really taking AI to different levels have gotten skilled at asking the right questions, follow-up questions, maybe even berating or waterboarding your chat GPT a little bit into giving you actual answers and not taking no. So to listen to these conversations that people are having with AI, that one caught my attention. Thanks to Brandon and Adam Schnell from Brain Supreme for sending that over to me, and that really kind of screwed up my whole day after I listened to that.
I had to take a walk. I'm like, my jaw was on the
yeah, it's a bit much. Weezy, well, I know you've got a busy week. You're talking to Drew Treglia Saturday, or what else do you have going on?
I actually had a fun one yesterday as well with ex singer of UB40 who got kicked out of the band for refusing the jab.
Interesting.
Yeah, dude, it was a great conversation, man. We hit it off, and we're gonna do another one next month. We had some great chemistry last night. But I've been doing Lincoln assassination research for the last almost 2 years, heavily inspired through the late great David McGowan. And if anyone's followed that rabbit hole, which I don't think very many have, but if you have, my takes are very, very different from anything you'll hear from any mainline historians. And I'll back it up. I'll show you why I believe the way I believe. And it just goes to show we've been lied to from, 160 years ago and perhaps from the very beginning of this country. Just nothing but lies and lies and lies. And you can search me by just putting in What is Truth podcast by Weezy. You got to put it in the Weezy because there's some copycats out there. And when you get kicked off of Google, it's a little bit harder to get found. So
yeah,
thanks for having me, Charlie.
Something right.
Oh, man, I don't know if it's right. I ain't make no damn money.
If they don't like you, then it's right as far as we're concerned. If they're trying to silence you, then there must be something going on there. So awesome. Everyone go check out What is Truth with Weezy. Teace. Are you in the who are you editing right now? You said that once you get into the editing of the mini docs, you wind up hating the people because you spend so much time looking at them. Who are you hating right now?
Okay, well, you're next, so I don't hate.
Hang on, we've all been in a thing that you did. What?
That's a different thing. Yeah,
okay.
You were all, not all of you, but many of you were participated in the plan to save the world, and thank you for that. And that's online for anyone to watch anytime. What I do is conspiracysynergy.com. The previous episodes were kind of like introductory stuff for friends and family who are just starting to exit the mainstream perspective. So they can go there, conspiracysynergy.com, in order to be able to check that out. And recently, what Charlie's referring to are the mini documentaries that I'm making that go into the firsthand stories and accounts of a variety of different content creators. One of them already being on Graham, who's with us here today, and Darren, and another one is on Hervoje Morik. And the last one was on Derek Bros. And the one that I'm doing now is a combination of Ryan from T-Lab. So that's Ryan Christian combined with Union of the Unwanted Crowd, because we had Sam Tripoli there in Tennessee along with a bunch of other people. So it's a convergent episode to talk about Zionism and go into that kind of thing. So that's what I'm up to. If you can support me, go to conspiracysynergy.com. That's where to watch the mini documentaries. And then Charlie will be next. This one will hopefully be out in the next 3 weeks. That's what I'm up to.
Awesome. Yep. I know that there's going to be some interesting footage of me with Sam Tripoli sitting on an outdoor swing in the Tennessee rainstorm with puppies on our laps talking about the New World Order.
Yep.
So if you ever wondered if that was going to happen, the answer is strangely it did. Speaking of Sam Tripoli, we've got Mark from My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast and the most essential component of Tinfoil Hat, aside from Sam, I would say. The guy who makes it all happen. What's going on over with you, Mark?
Wow. I don't know if Sam would agree with that, but thank you.
He would definitely not agree with it, but I'm going to say it anyway, because he wouldn't have a show if you weren't booking guests for him.
Cool. Well, thank you, Charlie. My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. Like you said, Graham was recently a guest along with his co-host, Darren, and Charlie was a guest last month, so check it out. We just put out a new episode with the guy who inherited the triangular manuscript from Saint Germain. His grandparents were telling him this legend when he was a kid, and then he grew up, realized it was something important to his family somehow, and then he translated the famous triangular manuscript of Saint Germain, which allegedly tells you how to find gold and some other interesting things. So yeah, that was a great podcast. I just published it this afternoon, so go check it out.
Awesome. Graham, how's Grimerica doing?
Yo, we're doing pretty good. Yeah, find everything at grimerica.ca. We got a couple trips. We're taking Randall Carlson to the Azores to look for Atlantis in November. There's like one spot left for that. We're going to Easter Island next spring. Like Matt mentioned there, we've got lots of audiobooks. We've got Arthur Conan Doyle's The History of Spiritualism. Like Matt mentioned, he's sort of supporting of the spiritualism movement. And we got lots of other audiobooks at adultbrain.com, like lots of Blavatsky, some Crowley, H.G. Wells. Mark just mentioned Saint Germain. We've got the biography of Saint Germain on there, a bunch of esoteric books, some new thought, all kinds of stuff like that. So adultbrain.ca.
Well, I was just in Arizona this last weekend with Drew Treglia, the director of Jones Plantation, and we started talking about your trips with Randall Carlson. We both were like, we want to go.
They're a blast. They're a blast. I mean, the people are amazing, right?
Yeah. So fantastic. Ricky couldn't be here tonight. He is being a fantastic dad and coaching basketball or soccer, or maybe, I forget. He's coaching. So anyway, he couldn't be here, but go to the rippleeffectpodcast.com, check out all of his shows, download them. Like I said at the beginning, if you like shows, if these are shows you like, make sure to rate them, write a little review, matters for whatever reason. Midnight Mike, Our Big Dumb Mouth podcast, the greatest podcast in the world. Check that out, ourbigdumbmouth.com. You can catch it live Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern and Saturdays at noon Eastern on Rumble and Twitch and I think X. Sam Tripoli actually does a show with Midnight Mike called Doom Scrolling. You can check that out or go to samtripoli.com and find some dates. Catch his live act. He's traveling the country this summer. So if he's coming to your town, go support him. Go check him out and see what you think. Macroaggressions.io is my website. You can catch that. I've got episodes coming out twice a week. Activistpost.com for all of your independent news. Naturalblaze.com for your alternative health. And Wednesday night, June 4th at 7 p.m. at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific is the premiere of Barnum World. It's the new mockumentary by the guys who did Jones Plantation. Legal Man plays the star again. Drew Treglia directed. This is his new one. It's fantastic. We had the premiere Saturday night in Phoenix. It's going to be available on YouTube and everywhere for free. If you're interested, just go check it out Wednesday night. It'll be there. I'm the narrator and the interviewer, so you don't see me, but I'm the one who's asking the questions. It's hysterical, and I know that, and I'm not just saying that. We showed it in front of a live audience on Saturday with 150 people. It was fantastic. Had a nice Q&A afterwards, and then went to a bar with all the fans and drank until 2 o'clock in the morning, which is what you got to do after you watch that movie. So check it out. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.